Students of class 7. For today's class, we're going to be doing the reading and understanding of the third part of chapter number 7, which is Chandini. All right, but before we actually get into that, let's do a quick recap of what we have covered so far. All right, so Abu Khan is an old man and he lives in the Almora Mountains, the peaks of Almora, which is in the northern part of India, and he is a lonely old poor man. Right, and because he's lonely, he likes to have goats with him as pets, and he treats these pets just like how he treats his own children. He talks to them that way and takes care of them just like his own children. Now, Abu was really happy with his goats, but he was unlucky in the matter of his goats. And why was he unlucky? Because all his goats, when he used to tie them up at night, used to pull on the string that he used to tie them up with and break loose. And then they would disappear into the hills beyond, only to get eaten by a big bad wolf that lived in the mountains. Okay, so at one point in time, all of his goats leave Abu, even though he's taken such good care of them. All right, they always wanted their freedom, and that mattered to them the most, and that is why they used to run away to the hills, only to get eaten by the wolf that was there living in the mountains. All right, so then at one point in time, when all his goats leave him and get eaten by the wolf, Abu Khan says to himself that he will have no more goats in his house ever again. He does not want any because all of them want to run away from him. All right, but he still feels terribly lonely, and he manages to get himself a small little pet goat called Chandini. He names the goat Chandini. Okay, and he thinks to himself that the young goat will stay with him for much longer than the other goats, because he will give her good food and he will take care of her really well, and she will never want to go back to the mountains and get eaten over there. But the situation is really, really bad. This little goat Chandini does not like to be tied at all. So she speaks to Abu one day and asks him for her freedom. She says, I want to go to the hills. This is what I want to do. I want to see what's there beyond. All right. And she stops eating food when Abu refuses. Abu refuses. He wants the goat to be with him by his side all the time. But when he refuses to let her go to the mountains and get her freedom, this goat Chandini stops eating, and she becomes really thin and very weak. All right, and she can no longer handle the fact that she is being tied up, and she speaks to Abu and tells him that she wants to go away to the mountains, and because her freedom is important to her. All right, so that's where Abu decides not to tie her up anymore, and then he puts her in a shed, in a hut, and he locks the door, but he forgets that the window of the hut where this little goat has been kept is open, and this goat manages to jump and run away. All right, so Chandini went back to the hills. She knew the wolf was somewhere there, and she was ready to put up a good fight. This is the third part of the story. Let's read and understand this better. Now, while you're doing this at home, I want you to take out a pencil and also mark down the difficult words and their meanings as and when it is explained. All right, so Chandini reached the hills. It seemed to her that the old hills were standing in a row to welcome her. She felt like a child meeting her parents after a long separation. Whenever she went, the tall grass rose to embrace her, meaning that it was so tall that the grass, it felt to her that it was so welcoming, and she was so happy to be free that it felt that the grass was giving her a hug. All right, so the flowers bloomed to amuse her for her liking, and the wind sang an endless song of welcome. How different all of this was from the past in the prison house that of Abu's compound. All right, so she thinks this is so different. My freedom is so wonderful. When I was in Abu Khan's house, I was always tied up because he thought I was going to run away. But this is so much better. It was the happiest day in Chandini's life. And that day, she played for hours on the grass slopes of the hills and she met a herd of wild goats. And these wild goats, they asked her to join their group. But Chandini politely refused. She said no, she wanted to enjoy her new freedom all by herself. Now the sun disappeared behind the hills, and soon darkness enveloped the grass, meaning it covered it, like how you put a letter into an envelope and cover your letter. Same way, darkness enveloped the grass, meaning it covered the grass, meaning that the sun went down and it was dark all around. Okay, so the flowers and the trees, it enveloped the flowers, the grass and the trees. The darkness enveloped them. Right, so the wind stopped blowing and there was stillness all around except but for a strange sound that was coming from the bushes. The sound was like a grunt. And what is a grunt? A grunt is a sound that is made generally by a pig. Okay, if you hear a pig, the sound that it makes is a okay, with your nose. If you make that sound is called a grunt. All right, so what was it? She did not know what it was. It wasn't Abu Khan's voice calling her back to the compound, nor was it the voice of another goat. Then Chandini thought of the dangerous wolf who lived in the mountains, and she felt scared. Okay, because of the sound, and she couldn't tell and she couldn't differentiate what kind of sound that was because it was a grunt. Okay, so she should go back to the safety of Abu Khan's hut. No? No, she said to herself. Death in an open field is far better than life in a small hut. Okay, so she said dying in an open field is far better than living life in a small little hut that Abu used to keep her in. All right, so she likes her freedom. The wolf had come out of the bushes and was staring greedily at Chandini. He was greedy and he wanted to eat this little goat. His eyes were shining like burning coals in the darkness. All right, so when coal is burnt in the darkness, it generally gets a fiery reddish orange color eyes. All right, so this is the color of the eyes that the wolf had, that the author in this lesson is referring to. All right, like burning coals in darkness. He seemed in no hurry. He knew the new goat was his. All right, so he's very confident that he's going to eat this goat. Now the wolf and the goat sized up each other, meaning that they understood what their physique is, their physical structure. They sized up each other. They saw whether they are big enough to be eaten, or the goat also saw that the wolf was much bigger in size probably. Okay, and they just stood and stared at each other. They saw and sized up each other. The wolf was a big and ferocious, whereas the goat, though healthy, was small. Okay, so here it describes that the wolf was big and he was ferocious. All right, he really looked really ferocious, whereas the goat was healthy because Abu Khan fed Chandini really well and was really small. But small is not weak. Chandini stood firm on her legs. All right, she stood firmly on her legs and did not move. Her head slightly bent and horns jutting out. All right, so the goat has horns here on top of its head. So when it puts its heads down, its horns as well will go in the direction of poking somebody. All right, so he puts his horns. He put his head down and his horns were slightly jutting out, meaning facing the other direction to poke somebody. All right, she was a picture of courage. All right, so if you could look at her standing there against this ferocious big bad wolf, then it looked like she was in a picture. What was the picture about? It was a picture of courage. She looked courageous. She looked like a brave soldier ready to fight a treacherous army. A treacherous meaning a really bad army. Okay, so she stood like a brave soldier ready to fight this enemy. All right, so I must put up a good fight, Chandni thought. Success or failure is a matter of luck or chance. Okay, whether you succeed in something or if you fail in something, it's just a matter of luck or just a matter of chance. But I must put up a good fight, is what Chandni thinks to herself. Now the fight began. It went on through the night. The moon, which had been watching the fight, began to grow pale and suddenly hid behind the clouds. Okay, so the moon was covered by the clouds over there, and there was no more moonlight falling on the ground. Okay, so the stars also began to disappear one by one. So the stars slowly started to become daylight, and a faint light appeared in the east because the sun rises in the east. A faint light is a very, not a very strong light, but a very bleak light. Okay, so a faint light appeared in the east, and the morning call for prayer came from a distant mosque. Okay, so in this place, Almora, there were also people who were Muslims who were living there, which is why the person who owned this goat, Chandini, was also called Abu Khan, because he was also a Muslim. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, Muslims go for a prayer to the mosque, and they generally call out through a loudspeaker so that people come and attend the prayer. All right, so at early in the morning, the call for prayer came from the mosque, which was at a distance. The first rays of the sun saw Chandini lying on the ground. She was completely soaked in blood. The wolf, tired and sleepy, was getting ready to devour her. All right, so when the first rays of light came, Chandini was lying on the ground. She was bleeding and totally soaked in blood. Okay, and the wolf was tired, but he was sleepy. All right, and he was getting ready to devour her, meaning getting ready to start eating her. Okay, so then what happens? An assembly of birds perched on top of a tree nearby and was debating the result of the fight. Who is the winner? One of them asked. The wolf, of course. Most of them said, a wise old bird declaimed with confidence, Chandni is the winner. All right, so even though this goat was small, all right, there was an assembly of birds just before the wolf was going to eat Chandni. Okay, so the birds perched on top of a tree, meaning sat on top of a tree nearby, and was debating. They had a debate with regard to who won the fight, the result of the fight. Who is the winner? One of them asked. And the wolf, of course, most of them said. Okay, so the wolf was the winner because obviously he was going to eat Chandni. All right, but a wise old bird who was also perched on the tree with the assembly of other birds said he declaimed with confidence. He did not claim it. He did not say yes, but he did the opposite. He declaimed it. All right, and he said it with confidence that Chandni is the winner. Okay, and it tells us about the confidence and courage of this little goat Chandni because she wants her freedom. She wants her freedom so much that she's even willing to die for her freedom, no matter what the consequences. She knew about the big bad wolf. She knew about them, her other sisters or other goats who left Abu Khan's house and went to the hills. But she also wanted her freedom. She wanted to be all alone. She enjoyed it. She did not like being tied. Okay, and because of this, what happened is she enjoyed her freedom, and she also got to get killed and be eaten up because that freedom that she desired was the most that she wanted. Okay, so that is why the wise old bird stood at the end and said Chandni is the winner, because even though she was smaller in size than the big bad wolf, she still put up a good fight, such a good fight that the wolf was tired and sleepy at the end of the fight. Okay, so yes, he was tired and sleepy because it took him the whole night to go ahead and fight with Chandni, and then at the end of it, he still killed her. But Chandni was the winner because she put up a brave fight, and that is what the author tells us in the end. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. This brings us to the end of the lesson. I hope you enjoyed this explanation. Continue enjoying sessions for the rest of the day, and question and answers for this lesson will be posted on your Google Classroom page, so make sure you check that. Thank you for being part of today's class. Have a nice day, everybody.